Like great stones scattered upon the sea, the Greek islands still bear witness to the changing myths of Western man. Here Theseus killed the Minotaur, here Icarus flew too close to the sun, here Ulysses beat his storm-tossed way back to Ithaca against the wrath of the sea god Poseidon. Today, a gentler god rules these waters. Upon the crags and promontories of even the most desolate islands, men have set the symbols of a new protective deity. Around church and shrine lie the vestiges of earlier times. Across the landscape, walls of rubble trace the broken history of our beginnings, the ruined stages of dramas we often can only guess. Beneath the sea lie mysterious shapes and littered cargo from the sunken ships of antiquity. Fathoms below the surface rests a burial sarcophagus that never reached its intended occupant. Here, the columns for a temple that was never built. And what of Atlantis? Does it too lie drowned in the Aegean? Object of search since Plato first described it. Is it fiction? Or is it the shadowed memory of a remote actual event, reshaped by human imaginings? With the Calypso anchored at the island of Syra off northern Crete, Cousteau searches for evidence to prove or disprove scholarly theories that Atlantis and Minoan civilization were the same. Beneath the helicopter, Syra is an arid waste. It is hard to imagine that once it was forested and green, that these scattered Minoan ruins may have been part of the Atlantis Plato described. Minoan arts and trade dominated the eastern Mediterranean for 1,500 years. Then, in the 15th century before Christ, Minoan power went into abrupt decline. Why? What suddenly had so weakened Crete that she now could be overrun by Greeks from the mainland? Because Syra is one of the few shelters for ships on Crete's exposed northern coast, Cousteau is hopeful that its surrounding waters may reveal useful clues. Helped into his suit by diver Patrick Delamotte, whom he jokingly calls his favorite dresser, Cousteau, with companions Raymond Call and Yvonne Giacoletto, prepares to make an underwater reconnaissance. With a camera to record their finds, they make their first dive beside the peninsula that juts like a bony finger into the sea.
The helicopter views looked promising, but we are totally unprepared for the astonishing apparition that awaits us. Along the slanting shelf of the bottom, there stretches, perpendicular to the shore, an uneven wall, indented by bays or scallops, extending some 100 yards long and 30 yards wide. It is, in fact, an immense deposit of pottery, literally hundreds of thousands of vases, pitchers, and cups. Though a few lie detached, most have been cemented together in one huge bristling mass by the chemical action of the sea. What on earth could have caused such an assemblage of pottery vessels, many still undamaged, and as serenely beautiful as this simple cup? Only later, remembering the bays that broke the wall, will it occur to me that perhaps it was once a row of ancient ships, each laden with the jars by which traders transported oils, wines, spices, and other commodities in early times. Then, sunken, the cargoes had retained the rough contours of the hull as the ship's timbers rotted and disappeared. Yet, why would a dozen ships, fully laden, sink almost side by side as if tied to a pier or jetty? And what is the significance of the random building stones we find? As we drift in growing puzzlement, I meet another living creature, an aplysia or sea hare, a large mollusk without a shell. Willingly, it joins in wordless play with a stranger, but it gives me no answers.
Still bemused by the multiple questions raised by the pottery wall, Cousteau returns to the deck of Calypso. To Chief Diver Albert Falco, he describes the extraordinary accumulation of artifacts lying beneath the Calypso's hull. Some of the pots can be pried loose quite readily, but most of the jars and cups are deeply embedded in the rigid mass. A large chunk of the conglomerate is hoisted to the deck for a closer look.
Amenez-le par ici. Oui, c'est bien.
Though the vivid colors of the living algae will quickly fade, Cousteau believes the fragment will serve as an interesting exhibit, revealing the condition in which artifacts are often recovered from the sea.
C'est un petit morceau de cette falaise de poterie.
With Lazaros Kolonas, archaeologist and official representative of the Greek government, he demonstrates the position of the pottery and later discusses the mystery of the wall.
Beautiful, but stones mixed up to turn it over. Remettez-le ici. Soulevez-le. Voilà. It was like this on the bottom. I think in museum it's very interesting.
C'est très curieux. Là, c'est des bateaux qui ont jeté ces...
Equally baffled by the immense deposit, Kolonas hazards a guess that the pottery has been discarded over long periods by the people living on the peninsula. But Cousteau disagrees, points out that the pottery is too far from shore.
So if it was falling from here, it could be there. It is not there, it is here. Ah, bizarre, hein?
With Kolonas and the young interpreter, Jean-Marc Eulerus, Cousteau goes ashore to explore the site of the old port town once built along the peninsula. More and more, Cousteau is beginning to share some of the views of such scholars as Frost, Luce, Galanopoulos, and Marinatos, who argued that the collapse of Minoan power and the evidence of widespread destruction throughout the eastern Mediterranean were all related to the same vast geologic upheavals. Everywhere, atop the peninsula overlooking the bay, the shattered remains of tiny Minoan houses lie around them.
1 meter 25. Only. And about 3 meters. It comes up to here. 2 meters. How is it that these houses, these habitations are so small, so narrow?
Πώς έτσι και όλα αυτά τα σπίτια είναι τόσο μικρά και τόσο στενά? Ναι, αυτά τα σπίτια είναι τόσο μικρά γιατί είναι χαρακτηριστικό αυτής της εποχής. Ίσως να ήταν κατοικίες, ίσως εργαστήρια. Μια συγκέντρωση.
Kolonas explains that both in dwellings and workshops, an assembly of small rooms was more stable and was characteristic of the time.
This enormous wall, it's not very thick, but it's very long. And it's on the top. What is it?
Συνεχίζεται από εδώ. Εδώ πέρα. This is a whole building which is over there and which is at the upper part of the city. And all around this palace are the houses, the warehouses, the habitations and the shops which surrounded the palace.
But it's all flat and destroyed. I think I can imagine what happened in this place and all over the Mediterranean. You know, the problem of Crete, big problem of Crete is the sea raised by the north winds, the heavy seas beating the northern coast of Crete where there are very few shelters. So the small ships of antiquity were seeking shelter in Dia or here in Psyra, like Calypso, for example. And I can imagine dozens of ships, of antique ships, here in this bay, one near the other. And then suddenly, when the explosion of Santorini began, there was a tidal wave. And I can imagine this huge tidal wave, 330 feet high, coming here, sweeping clean all this peninsula, all the houses brushed clean into the sea, and sank all the ships at once. And I can imagine, I can dream of this catastrophe where all the Minoan ships, all the ships of antiquity were sunk all over the Mediterranean the same day by this tidal wave.
If indeed Minoan civilization was the original of Plato's Atlantis, then the answers to its sudden destruction may well lie 75 miles north of Crete, at the island sometimes known as Santorini, but more commonly called Thera. Here, once again, the helicopter lifts off to make the first reconnaissance. From the air, Thera today resembles the shards of a broken cup 10 miles across. The fragments are all that remain of a single island that erupted about 1450 BC in what is estimated to have been the loudest explosion ever heard on Earth. Around the caldera where once a mountain stood, the inner rim of cliffs reveal the successive layers of tephra, the volcanic pumice and ash deposited when more than 50 cubic miles of material were lifted into the air and carried across the entire East Mediterranean basin. From the shore, a path of long cement steps zigzags up the cliff for over a mile to the little town of Thera perched at the top. Waterless, dependent on rainfall trapped in cisterns or brought by ship, the Thera inhabitants raise little produce, are largely dependent upon the deposits left by the eruptions and earthquakes that still shake the island. From the layers of ash and pumice, shiploads of material were carried away in the 1860s for the building of the Suez Canal. Since classical times, the cliffs have even served as a kind of human rookery, where people have built dwellings and storerooms by scooping caves out of the pumice. At the center of the caldera, the Kameni Islands, the twin cones of a new volcano, have appeared since the immense earlier eruption. The first, Palea Kameni, in the 2nd century before Christ, the other, Nea Kameni, less than 400 years ago. Once again, the geologic cycle is in motion, building a new volcano which will explode in some new cataclysm, perhaps 10,000 years from now. Pocked with small craters, some filled with sulfur pools or simply gases, it is a landscape indifferent to man. From the deck of Calypso, the cindered shoreline of Nea Kameni appears grim and forbidding. With Falco and old associate Frederick Dumas, Cousteau outlines plans for an underwater survey at a depth of 60 to 120 feet along the north side of the island. The objective? To search for caves or fissures or indications of volcanic activity, as well as any possible signs of human artifacts.
Toute l'eau est resserrée vers la côte et peut-être ils vont voir là la sortie. C'est là que je veux dire. Le courant doit plaquer les eaux vertes. Avec le chaleur et le courage d'aller à la pointe là-bas et faire revenir. On va y aller.
But the diving team finds no bottom, only the sheer face of a precipice that falls away and vanishes in the murky depths. Upon this steep wall, the divers find no evidence of archaeological remains of Atlantis or any other civilization. Only an austere and formidable environment that makes no concessions to human need. Here, a stream of bubbles is a silent omen that deep below the great sea-filled cavity, geologic forces are still in motion. Throughout the caldera, the depths, even near the shoreline, vary from 600 to 1,200 feet. Thus, great areas of the volcanic basin lie well beyond the range of the divers. To explore this previously impenetrable domain, Cousteau now readies the soucoupe for the journey. Equipped with lights and camera and its own self-contained environment, it is a small two-man world in which Cousteau and Falco will go down nearly 1,000 feet.
The hook from the hoist is removed. We are free. We begin our descent into the void once occupied by the fiery magma chamber, which would pulverize a mountain, scatter it over 200,000 square miles, obliterate cultures, and change forever the course of human history. Yet, life returns. As we sink into the barren depth, the darkness closes around us. Even our powerful lights find nothing but an impenetrable black emptiness. For a long instant, I feel that, like Dante, I am on a journey to hell. gradually we rise again past the naked rocks. Again, I think of how often we stare at the heavens in wonder, yet are blind to the constellations near us, the interlocked worlds of unnumbered forms of life, each forever testing the limits within which it exists. The snail or the gull, the crab or the whale, the little giraffe with its inner metronome. It is only man who lives under the illusion that by crossing the walls of his environment, as indeed we have in the soucoupe, he has conquered nature.
In the caldera, all was calm. The violence of what may have been Earth's greatest explosion seemed remote, impossible, a trick of human memory. Now the soucoupe emerges from stillness into storm, where a running sea threatens to smash it against the Calypso's hull.
Patrick, vous pouvez envoyer le câble ici. Le câble, tu peux nous le faire passer? Vous pouvez l'envoyer ici, là.
Finally, the cable is attached and held taut by the launch against threatened collision. At last retrieved from the sea and hoisted to the Calypso deck, the two tossed mariners climb out into the wind.
Voilà. Oui, ça souffle. Ça souffle, hein? C'est plus calme en bas. En bas, c'est le calme des grandes profondeurs. Alors, c'était beau? Ah, il y a des choses. Ah, 150 mètres de profondeur. Hein? 150. Et une bande de...
To his associates, Cousteau tells of a singular discovery. Nearly 500 feet down, at a depth well beyond that reached by the free divers, and well beyond the life zone in the caldera, they have found a remarkable seam, perhaps 5 feet in width, that forms an almost continuous band around the underwater flanks of Nea Kamenni. Unlike the larger rock above and below it, Cousteau and Falco report, the seam is composed of scoria, small broken stones which have been seared and blackened by great heat and flame. Based on his own observation and prevailing opinion among geologists, Cousteau believes the scorching of the rock has occurred not long ago, and that it represents clear evidence of continuing volcanic activity in the new magma chamber beneath the Earth's crust. Deceptively peaceful now, the great giant still mutters in its sleep. Even in relatively recent times, in 1925, in 1938, and even as late as 1956, eruptions and tremors have caused lives and damage on Thera that is still visible. None have even remotely approached the disastrous effects of the original paroxysm. The earthquakes that accompanied it, the fallout that destroyed crops and trees, finally the tidal wave that sank ships and swept away communities throughout the Aegean. One of the world's foremost volcanologists, Harun Tazieff, describes what must have happened.
Dr. Tazieff, we have prepared the scale model of Santorini. As we guess, it looked like 4,000 years ago before the explosion.
A little steeper.
A little steeper, or 4 times exaggerated. Now, what are your ideas about how it happened?
Well, my ideas are based upon what all the specialists have studied very carefully for many, many years. Well, according to geological evidence, it is almost sure that the volcano was apparently extinct. It was inactive since several centuries, when approximately 3,500 years ago, it resumed its activity. And this first eruption, after many centuries of repose, was very violent indeed. And most probably, people who have not been killed had to evacuate the island. The geological evidence is clear about this phase. And after this first eruption, which lasted maybe a few days, a few weeks, maybe a few months, the volcano again was asleep for a while, 10 or 20 years. After this lull, the eruption started anew, and in a few days, it grew in intensity up to a formidable paroxysm. At Santorini, at Thera volcano, the eruption grew and grew in intensity, and in the last hours of this paroxysmic activity, tremendously huge quantities of energy and rocky material were hurled into the air. After all this matter had been ejected, a huge cave was created down below, and when all had been expelled, the upper part of the volcano collapsed suddenly in this cave. And this collapse created the huge caldera. See, the water followed, was sucked in, and then tremendous tidal waves were created.
In a model basin, a Hollywood studio once attempted to recreate the awesome power of a tsunami or tidal wave. If there remain any vestiges of a possible Atlantis site in the caldera, there is now no visible evidence. Any artifacts would lie forever buried under a huge mantle of volcanic ash. Even today, slight disturbance of the tephra along the steep underwater slope causes a ghostly avalanche. Ashore, the unstable tephra offers advantages. Believing Thera and Crete jointly formed the basis of the Atlantis legend, archaeologists at Thera in 1967 began excavations now supervised by Dr. Christos Douma.
Does this represent the entire city of Crete?
No, only one part of it, and we don't know what percentage of the city this uncovered area represents, because we have no limit in any point of the city.
You never reached the limit.
No.
What is this house here?
Here we have the north facade of the house Delta, and here is the staircase leading up to the first floor.
What is this, a square?
This is the square which, because of its shape, is called the triangle square. And here we have a large window in front of the building. Here is an interesting passage under the building connecting the two sides of the street.
Oh, yeah.
Of the street.
They were passing actually here? This public passage?
Yes, public passage.
Do you think that the people had time to evacuate the city?
Certainly, because first of all, we don't find any skeletons, and no victims have been noticed so far. And secondly, we have no precious objects, jewelry, vessels of precious metals, etc. So it is rather certain that they had the time to evacuate.
Already, more than 40,000 square feet lie under a protective shelter.
Oh, it's enormous. What a sight, really. It's incredible.
Under the roof, a growing network of streets still terminates in the encircling volcanic ash. Yet, like the amphoras and household artifacts embedded in the tephra, still awaiting release, out of the centuries, a community where people worked and laughed and dreamed is slowly emerging.
What was this little room?
Well, this is the room of the lilies. It was covered with frescoes, all three walls.
In this tiny, cramped little room?
Yes. And in front of us, there was the large painting of the fresco with some swallows.
The swallows were here?
Yes.
Oh, they are beautiful.
And the other wall, much narrower, had also another swallow which goes to land on a flower. Mm-hmm. And on the other wall, there are also the swallows which were kissing.
Ah, yeah. And what was this room used for?
We don't know, but it was found literally packed with pottery. About 250 vases were found here, and also the bed, which is in the museum, was also here.
So it must have been a small sleeping room, probably.
Probably.
Here, the past is very close. The sound of my own footfall might have been 4,000 years ago. It is easy to believe that in this spellbound square, time has stood still, that in a moment, children will come out to play.
It was in this building that we found the frescoes of the fleet, of the fishermen, of the
in this building?
riverscape. Yes, in this building.
The long panel found in the so-called Admiral's House shows deer pursued by lions not found in Europe. Painted in the miniature style of the frescoes at Knossos in Crete, the long, elegant ships of the flotilla show the clear influence of Egyptian design. Although sometimes believed to depict a naval battle, there's no portrayal of actual combat. It seems we're guided there by dolphins.
Where are we here?
Here we are in the Pithoi storeroom. And these jars were found containing different kinds of grains.
Some of these are enormous.
Yes, they were found containing remains of various kinds of crops and seeds. And as you can see, some of them could contain several hundreds of kilos inside.
And why so many?
Well, this is the reason why we try to interpret this room as a storeroom for the community rather than for a family. As you see here, we have a large window at street level.
At street level, you generally don't have windows, is that correct?
We have windows, but not so large,
Yes.
small windows.
Yes.
But we have this evidence that they were paid workers and slaves in olives, in figs, in flour, etc. And probably somebody was sitting inside, keeping the accounting.
There was a queue outside.
There was a queue, and
they were giving their names or the
yes.
checks.
And if this happened, then we could easily consider this room as a bank.
Yeah, sort of a bank.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And these
are in position now, you see how nicely decorated they are. And they are still full of ash. We did not empty them yet.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And they had practically no animals here.
In the city, there is no evidence that animals lived in these houses.
Because it was a thickly populated area.
Yes.
Now, do you think there were frescoes in every house in this town?
So far, there is no house which has been excavated without frescoes.
Really?
Yes.
Is it not unusual? I mean...
It is unusual, and this is the reason why we believe that this was a wealthy community living here. And this suggests that the people were conducting activities supplying with this wealth. Mm-hmm. And this cannot be anything else than trade and shipping. And probably we can say here that we have a sort of wealthy bourgeois society.
Of ship owners.
Of ship owners.
How long do you think it will be until all this site is excavated?
I cannot estimate about all this site, but I can estimate what is under the roof.
Yes.
And this at least requires 50 years of work.
50 years?
50, well, it's not much when you count in centuries.
I thought it could go a little faster than that.
It is difficult to go faster because, as you know, the excavation is something like a book of which the pages, after being read, are destroyed. So we have to go very carefully and read very carefully and record everything before we proceed. Before we destroy the page. Well, here it is a typical example of the procedure how we do with the restoration of the frescoes. Mm-hmm. Here we have a corridor, the sides of which, as you see, they were covered with frescoes. We immediately blocked the whole thing and packed it with ash, volcanic ash, waiting for the specialists to come. Meanwhile, the parts which are uncovered have been covered with gauze, which is stuck on them, waiting. And from this place come these fragments, which show that we have lily flowers again.
So under the gaze here are pictures?
Yes, they are.
So there is a buried treasure right here.
Yes, exactly. It is a treasure. Here in the laboratory we have several thousands of fragments like this, covered with gauze, and they are kept in drawers. Each drawer contains fragments from a different place. They are all catalogued and classified.
With several layers in each.
Yes, several layers in each drawer, you see. We have worked for several years here in the laboratory.
So that's the table on which you put the fragments together?
Yes, this is the ultimate jigsaw puzzle.
I should say so.
We have so many fragments after the gauze is removed, and in this we have a unique piece from this side with relief decoration, and in these frames we have this kind of sunflower or rosettes.
And when do you think this enormous work will be finished?
Well, it requires several months of work, if not a year, to be
before
completed.
It is sent to Athens to the National Museum?
Yes.
The salvaged bits of the paintings are transported to the museum laboratories in Athens. There, like elaborate jigsaw puzzles in which many of the pieces are missing, the frescoes are painstakingly reassembled by artisans and technicians. But the history of man and his illusions is less precise, flawed by uncertainties. though there are powerful arguments that Crete and its rich satellite Thera could have served as Plato's model for a high civilization destroyed by cataclysm, the jigsaw puzzle of the Atlantis myth remains incomplete. But perhaps Thera has left us something more. The eruption that ended the supremacy of Minoan culture preserved in volcanic dust these evidences of it. The shimmering landscape of Western civilization's virgin spring. In their frescoes, the Minoan artists told us of a fragrant world of animals and flowering plants, of playing children and mating birds. But they also revealed a less visible interior landscape, the poised serenity of a golden age in art, an open joy in the senses, the innocence of a civilization that believed it might last forever. Today, in the depths of a caldera, sponge fishermen find an arduous and uncertain living. In good years and bad, they come to harvest the sponges for the market at Aegina near Athens. They have put aside the old helmeted diving suits, now depend on multiple air hoses attached to a common source at the surface. Out of experience, each team has improvised its own decompression system, but the danger remains. Almost all, by the age of 40, have been crippled by the bends. It is, they feel, part of the cost of gathering sponges.
On the rim in Thera, the artists no longer paint frescoes. Yet, life goes on. Each day is a reminder that man has always lived on the edge of extinction by earthquake or plague, by famine or his own folly. Here, each man knows it is best to tend one's field and be thrifty with water, keep peace with neighbors, pray to whatever gods are handy, and if your wings are made of wax, do not fly too close to the sun.